Picture a beautiful, sacred harp made of simple materials being played by your heart with a symbol of love and martial arts grace engraved on the top. Your hand moves gracefully, playing your own strings, pulling your own strings, so to speak. And so it is the martial artist must find this grace, this love, and the righteous indignation when his temple and his tune is disturbed by the forces of evil. Igbos have a symbolic look of an ancient African martial art paradigm. Egypt was not always a desert, and the people who evolved outside of Africa, the lovely people, were not always there. The common location of man was Ethiopia, as far as scientists know at this point. Martial artists come from the Nile peoples, and West Africans have the continuity because of amalgamation, superimposition, and the migrations of people and their religions, as well as the starting point for protecting a tribe, clan, or society with an organized system of warfare that learns from nature. Igbos have a large dose of sacred morality, which has always been threatened by less righteous worldly forces. Perhaps they were taken as slaves before the slave traders from Europe, and the punishment that they had to endure was to return to a savage slave state, cut off from grace. After the slave trade, they were sent to the forbidden forest. Those who were taboo, who lived there, became the forbidden fruit of the tree, so to speak. If Jesus is to be compared to Haru as the continuity of martial arts of Ra, the leopard hawk king, we must consider what it means to be a fisher of men. Food, bread, and well-bred come to mind. Drugs change men and hinder light generation throughout the generations. This light generation will break free and cut itself out of the serpent and the bull that eats our kids if martial arts reason, and rasan are applied in a way that is consistent with every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. The devil uses his tail, the serpent's tail, or tail, T-A-L-E, a mist over airy, to lure them in. And Jesus uses the fact that we miss Eri, or a sacred land, or a sacred people, or our sacred forefathers, to bring us to God. If Igbo can break the cycle with all of the obstacles in our way, then all of man can as well. Atum Ra, Amen Ra, Ra Harkati. The first is a king who was, the second is a king who is, and the last is a king who will be. You will have no gods before the God in the Bible, and proper application will kill Apep, that ancient serpent. One must apply up to kill Apep, a primitive version of Ra. You must grow up spiritually and key up or connect with your Ka that is up. Lucifer, when he goes backwards, is Refi soul. Re's Fi is your soul. The serpent isn't God. The serpent represents man who was made in the image of God, who refuses to grow up past the serpent state of the garden. Lucifer comes down the ladder, which is the letter E, when you write it from top to bottom with those slashes, instead of remaining the first as A, the top angel. The sun makes the burr cold, warm, when the light that made it is connected to man. Hebrew has no vowels, and the H is the fence versus the gate of heaven, which God allows us to traverse according to his will. Chaldea becomes cold when you remove the vowels and the H, and Hebrew becomes burr. So kut and burr. The sun symbolically gives and takes life for God. Another way to look at it is cold with the O, the generation applied. We are the well and his well. The snake is symbolically found by water. The viper is said to ritually and prematurely kill the pharaoh, and the Jews who betrayed Jesus were called a brood of vipers. Amun-Ra is symbolic of the pharaoh, the sun's cycle, the cycle of generation, the fair cycle, humbling himself to show man why a monarchy consistent with God's plan is desirable and man should fall in line with the ray of the sun, or an obelisk, which symbolizes divine reproduction. This wordplay and parts of Egyptian mythology help make my point. Let me read you this cut behind on the time. These are clips from the book Egyptian Mythology by Veronica Ions. The poisoning assumed cosmic proportions, representing the danger that the embodiment of innocence and goodness might be destroyed by the principle of evil and cunning, when the baby Horus was poisoned by Set in the form of a snake. Horus being considered the archetype, this is a different section, that was page 61. Horus being considered the archetype of the pharaohs, right? Pair of the generations, they're doing it right. The message of the story was that Ra was supremely concerned with the welfare of his son, the pharaoh, and was able to protect him against all attacks by his enemies. But it was also the duty of the people to love and respect him. If the pharaoh should come to harm, the whole world order would collapse and the people themselves would necessarily die. So they need to love him and respect him. And all women who are from the Light Temple should desire him, if you ask me, but I'm not quite sure about that. But certainly in their respect and love, you can imagine that they would willingly give their bodies to advance his spiritual cause. The Mayat is the divine order, the feather, the ostrich feather of Mayet, or Mayat, on the scale that is being weighed by Anubis. So the Mayat is a divine order, divine order, the Father's vine, and God is asking you, may I? And you need to put your trust and faith in God, the God of love, the Creator, the Alpha man and the Omega, his Son as the first sign of a Logos. The Alpha male, I would say the Omega, is the Superman or Mega cycle, the Omega. Embodiment of God, the embodiment of innocence and good. No one is good but God alone, and only the top martial artists of a generation can represent God on earth. I put it in God's hands to reveal him to you, as is my duty. He may now be of any race, so I take back what I said about the last video, when it comes to the blacks, should be the martial arts order. I determine that the Gentiles are also worthy. I'd like to also correct myself about Bess. It turns out that he comes from Sudan, according to the book, and he is the leopard spirit of robbers. Rahilio, the black belt who beat me when I was first learning how to spar, the first time I sparred, I don't count that match because I was kind of set up for it, and it wasn't a full match, and it didn't start and end as a regular match should. So I still consider myself undefeated in a fair manner, but I give him his credit for what it's worth, if you understand what I'm getting at. 1 Kings 10:14 shows you that 666 was the weight in tons of the gold that King Solomon achieved. Adonijah was executed by Solomon, so they say, the Masons in Pike's book, Morals and Dogma, says Adonai and Lucifer are God. You can draw parallels to the internal conflict with the Jews who chose to prove their point with martial arts, which goes to Judah. Judah stood by David with Benjamin. Judah was ready to fight the rest of the Israelites when they were going astray. And Molech was the god of the Ammonites, and Baal in Kings is the god, the little g god of the enemies of the Jews, who the Jews turn to in their times of need, probably out of jealousy when God chooses amongst the Jews great men like David and great warriors like Benaiah, who are consistent with sacred morality, which also made the Jews anointed and empowered, so to speak, and ready to face their enemies. Various things in society, financial things, draw manhood into question. Only the Spirit of God makes a man, not dick size or finance or anything that is petty. Okay. The Sphinx means spin X. On a clock, you draw the X, sundial, father time. The hawk is hard to attain, a perfect martial arts form representing his grace and spirit, but a tall man has trouble applying this grace in form, and the short man has trouble applying typically the strikes in the martial arts like a leopard. So the leopard's kingdom is of the earth. An Ethiopian cannot change his skin, so to speak, is in the Bible. Just like a leopard can't change his spots, his black spots, which also shows you why the Black Panther is inferior to the leopard, and the ki or the chi or the ka of the lion as expressed through a leopard body type, which isn't necessarily tall but athletic and precision strikes, and his vantage point, his spiritual view, giving him the advantage. A rainbow is similar to the color of the sun, where you have blue, white, and yellow. The Ark of the Covenant, the sun and the rain together. The first kings, the warrior kings and the warrior pharaohs were called the rainmakers. Okay, so these are glowing colors. The hawk traverses. No one is good but God alone. So the roaring lion can be seen as Bess trying to prove his martial arts point without the Spirit of God. Vader throws his unnatural weight around. Or we can go on and on about the different proofs. Okay, look at Luke 12:48 and Luke 54 through 59 to understand about knowledge and forgiveness. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. Uh, you know, you will be beaten with few blows if you don't know better, and so on. So your reward in heaven depends partially on your knowledge, but certainly those who are in the know have an advantage, so to speak. But we all have a kind of understanding of right and wrong. He who loves righteousness and truth and is persecuted for righteousness and truth tends to be above everyone else. There is a divine order, and it depends on you doing the right thing. Women should take on the hare, they should be hard to catch, and only the hawk or the leopard, so to speak, can tag them, can tap them, so to speak. And I'll let you figure out different applications of that wordplay. Woman make herself in a way that is like a hare and agile, agility, a gill, a fish's gill, agil, iti. And so make it so that the people who move at God's speed and have divine insight can catch up. It'll probably cut out soon. I'm going to try to go over some of the wordplay that I found. Namesake, okay. Man Obi backwards is name Obi. Mene means many sons of Ra. The pharaoh, the Benu bird, the phoenix, lighting on top of the obelisk, which represents the Ben, the tip of the pyramid, the tip of the spear, the tippy top. Okay, sunlight, speed moving around. Statues work the angles. The sundial shows you the angles. The light is hitting it at God's speed, light speed, so to speak. Morning wood, tree of life, Benu, bird generation. Ankh, with the eye on. Hawk, hare, leopard, cheetah. I don't have time to explore these, and I don't remember some of the wordplay, but some of the explanation I have to shoot through this. Forge, so you have to forgive me. Forge, 4G. Forge for the gi, right? Either for presentation or to hang on top of your gi as a weapon, as you see on the Narmer palette, which shows him having some kind of a light saber or light sword. He has his servant is holding his sandals and what appears to be a belt, which could possibly be for him. The sword is hung in a way that the strap goes over his heart. There are other symbols that prove my martial arts point on the Mene or Narmer palette. Okay, so faith, salvation, righteousness, transferable skills. Work your sword and your shield in a way that protects your helm of salvation and the breastplate of righteousness so they don't get marked. Okay, and if they do, they can be refreshed through faith, but the point is to use the sword of scripture and the shield and transferable skills in different ways. Jehovah, Jah-hover, the hawk. Alpha, male, and Omega, I went over that. Maneuver, I went over Mayat Mate, the great fisherman. Horus was the great fisherman, the fisher of souls. Concerned, the harp-like instrument is on page 49. A stella, a still, okay, a stele. Elbow, the arc of the mountains, Jeb in the knee and the elbow. These are symbolic in the so-called mysteries. And that is, and one last, I'd like to end by saying, make the cut. A lot of you will make the argument that I am making this thing in a way that people like me make the cut. Well, it is natural for people who are passionate about what they believe to be a great embodiment of what they believe. In my case, I do believe I am the top martial artist and I am meant to be pharaoh. And this is because this is what I believe. This is how I see it. This is the Christian application. Think about the Pharaoh. Solomon marries the Pharaoh's daughter. Think about the Pharaoh with Abraham. Think about Ramses' heart being hardened. Well, I'm out of time.